What is going on? Excuse me. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Lineman Life podcast. I am your observant lineman, Uche Nwaneri. Today is 11/11/2020. Got some double ups there on numbers. Thought that might be a little interesting. I know there's some superstitious people out there in the world. I sometimes am that way myself. So it's 11/11, Wednesday, Lyman Life podcast. And of course, we've got plenty of things to talk about in the world of football. A couple of the major stories, of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers getting absolutely crushed against the New Orleans Saints in that Sunday night showdown. Huge game, telling game. And week 9 has turned out to be a telling season, telling week of the season, rather. It's really, it's hard to really nail it down. Yes, we got one team out there that is consistently, gone without losing, but it was close for them too. And I mean, we've seen how this plays out. After a few weeks of close games, somebody ends up getting that trip cord out. And the next thing you know, you're looking down the barrel of an L. So, that was a big game played. A lot to kind of break down when I go into talking about that. Also, going to be talking a little bit about new NFL rule that's been put into play. This was something that I'm sure will stir a little bit of debate in regards to the kind of incentive that the NFL is now giving for teams who hire and promote minority members of their staff over the positions of head coach and general manager. Those are going to be incentives that are going to provide teams with third-round compensatory picks. But just a couple of the headlines out of the NFL. Also, I'm going to take a look at some of the worst contracts in the NFL right now. And is in regards to what's going on with the Buccaneers, is Tom Brady finally being caught up with by Father Time? I think that's something that's going to be worth talking about as well in the NFL. I think we'll start off with that. Let's talk about Tom Brady. Let's talk about the situation that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in right now. Now, obviously, I know most of you probably caught the game. I know most of you probably saw the scores. Tampa Bay Buccaneers absolutely destroyed by the New Orleans Saints. I believe the score was 38-3. Wasn't even close. Tampa Bay was down 5 scores before the half. And, it just really looked like the Saints were running on all cylinders. And this is something that happens in the NFL throughout the course of the season. And it usually picks a different team as you go through the season. But these kind of trends continue to play themselves out in the NFL. You'll see teams that come out of the gates fast. You'll see teams that stumble out of the gates. You'll see teams that are lukewarm out of the gates. They start out 2-2. They start out 1-2, maybe underperform a little bit early in the season. I mean, a lot of different variables this year in regard to how these teams are coming out of the gate and the adjustments that are being made through the initial portions of the season that can give teams the ability to, catch up to the pack. And I think we're seeing that now with New Orleans, mainly because this is a team that, while they came out strong and did beat Tampa, they have the sweep for the series against Tampa, but they did falter a number of games after that, losing to the Raiders, losing to the Packers. And, those were close games, but those were games that New Orleans looked to be, lacking. They looked to be missing something. They didn't seem to have that same kind of consistency that we're used to seeing Drew Brees and company run around with. And since those 2 losses in a row, they haven't lost a game. These guys are on a 5-game streak. And again, they're not, outside of the Lions and the Bucks, you're not really seeing blowouts. You're seeing close games, but maybe that's good and helping the Saints kind of develop some character, develop some resolve within the team. And right now their arrow is pointed straight up. And, for a certain amount of time, I think that a lot of us thought that, the Buccaneers had figured something out too. The Buccaneers came out of the gates against the Saints, got pretty much manhandled. They rung off 3 in a row. I mean, they were playing against lesser competition, yes, but they rung off 3 in a row, lost to the Bears, and they rang off 3 in a row again, lose to the Saints. And, I think we're all kind of right back here again after looking at this team struggle against the New York Giants. We were kind of beginning to scratch our heads. What's going on? And just looking at the game against the Saints, I mean, it really was just not, there just really wasn't anything to it. Tom Brady was 22 for 38, 209 yards, 3 interceptions. Their running game was non-existent. Mike Evans had 64 yards receiving. I mean, these guys really just got the brakes beat off of them by the Saints. But, you watch that game, you break that game down. I looked at that game, and it was really, dominoes falling quick. The Buccaneers did not even attempt to run the ball after the first quarter. It felt like they were down so fast, and they were being assaulted with such ferocity that they just could not respond. And I think that they really got away from their game plan. They didn't know what they wanted to do. These guys were coming out on first downs when you're down 3 scores, running play action passes. You've got defensive ends rushing against tight ends on play actions. You think that's going to hold up? You've got Wirfs over there at the right tackle spot, just being abused left and right. I mean, he's been victimized by a couple of defensive ends this year. When you look at what Khalil Mack hip tossed this guy 5 yards. I mean, he's going through growing pains. So it's just not, you're not ever really able to nail down where these Bucks are really gonna stick in their stride. They just haven't been able to get in it and stay in it. I think we all thought that they had turned a corner when they blew out Green Bay, but it seems like that was just an anomaly, because then they come back and they struggle and damn near maybe should have lost to the New York Giants. And then they come out against their division opponent, the one opponent that you have to come out with full ferocity against to beat. And they get literally manhandled at every aspect of the game. Antonio Brown makes his debut for the Tampa Bay Bucks, and he's, I think, a 3-catch, 30-yard showing. I think Tom Brady tried to force it in there a lot, unnecessarily. I know he likes AB. I know that AB lives with him. He's cooking food for his kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, throw the ball to who's open. And, Antonio Brown will find his way into the groove. But what does that say about Antonio Brown's karma that he brings around teams that he joins? Because now, we're looking at this Tampa Bay team like these guys aren't going to even make it out of the division. They're not even going to get into the playoffs. That's kind of where we're at when we're talking about what's going on right now with these Tampa Bay Bucks. Tom Brady doesn't look like the Tom Brady that we're familiar with, that we have been familiar with in the past. His balls are, and I don't put this totally on Tom Brady, because if you understand Bruce Arians' offense, you understand this is how bad quarterbacks can look in his offenses. This guy's offense is built around the concept of option routes, and these are options off play actions where you have to have a quarterback turning his head in a hurry, reading the defense, and then knowing that him and the receiver are going to be on the same page to throw the same ball to the same route. This is where Jameis Winston got caught in a lot of things in his time in Tampa Bay, is that he was throwing the ball thinking a receiver was going one route, and the receiver was actually running a different route, and they both were wrong on what coverage they thought they were going up against. So the routes and the coverages, the solution to those have to be synchronized, or it's going to be a rough day for any quarterback in that system. And we saw probably the best example of that with Tom Brady and his performance. I mean, 3 interceptions. I mean, that's nowhere near what we expect in terms of, performance coming out of Tom Brady. I mean, 1 interception, even 2 interceptions in a game, you can look at and say, okay, that's a bad game for Tom Brady. 1 interception, 2 interceptions is a really bad game, but 3 interceptions, it means he's confused on something. It means he's not fully confident in some part. I mean, and I know one of those picks was batted by a defensive lineman and, got juggled around and got intercepted. But, I think that there is probably some of that, confusion that you saw with Jameis Winston that is now beginning to kind of take hold with Tom Brady. But we'll see how that plays out. Honestly, I think that, the Buccaneers being swept by the Saints is, I think, virtually, depending on how many teams are going to be in the playoffs this year, I think that might have put the nail in their coffin, unless some things happen for other teams in their out of division games, because that division will play a different division for its out of division games, and the outcome in some of those matchups against division opponents themselves could make a difference. But it's looking rough for the Bucs. They're going to need to get some things together, and they're going to need to string together some wins, a lot of them, to keep pace, and hope that those Saints, slip back a little bit. Hope they slip back. But let's move from that game. Let's talk a little bit about this new, and let me take a look here at the chat real quick before we go. See some of you guys in here, some Steelers guys in here. I see somebody shouting out my gamer setup. Yeah, I got them all back there. Dreamcast, PS4 Pro, Xbox One X. I'm waiting on my X series. I'm waiting on my Series X to get here. Once that gets here, I'm gonna be doing some live streaming with that. Hopefully, I got the Switch back there as well. I got the games. Now on the other side of that, switching from Tampa, and I was going to talk about this new NFL incentive program, but I think I'll wait on that one. We'll get to that one in a minute. Let's talk a little bit about this Cowboys Steelers game. I think this game was telling in a few ways for me. I think this game shows us that these Cowboys are still a talented man-for-man franchise. Like, this is still a team that is talented on a man-for-man basis. We saw some good plays out there against the Steelers. We saw this team, on a 19-9, holding a 19-9 lead. We saw their defense making some plays, in crucial positions, but a lot of times they got, those plays that they made were basically nullified by mistakes that they made on the other half of that, on the other part of their defensive structure. Like, you get to the quarterback, and yeah, I think it was a baloney call, but you get a roughing the passer call on a 3rd and 7, where this was a definitive drive to hold the Steelers from making any progress and to give the Cowboys a chance to try and ice the game. And from there, you just watch the Steelers dink and dunk the Cowboys into submission. And I think that, and I'm going to share this screen here with you guys. Let's see. Just kind of taking a look at some of the stats here. And you know what? I think maybe I might even pull up if I can pull up some footage on my Game Pass, I might do that as well. But because I am getting together my Steelers offensive line breakdown from this game in particular, because their offensive line is they're being protected. I think that the Steelers O-line is being protected pretty well right now. I think that their play calling is keeping them out of danger. I think that they are getting the ball out of Roethlisberger's hands as quickly as they can. And I really do think that if you take a little bit deeper look at some of the more fundamental things that they try to do as an offense, I think you'll see that the Steelers' offensive line tends to struggle with moving defensive fronts. They're not very sound when they're dealing with defensive fronts that move around, and they're not very sound when they're dealing with moving or replacing that defensive front 2 to 3 yards off the line of scrimmage. They're not getting a lot of push. And you see that in the very low amount of yards per carry that they're getting out of James Conner. James Conner went 9 for 22 for 2.4 a carry for a long of 6. And I think that long, that 6-yard long, I think that was like in the first quarter. So there's some real, I think there's some real issues on their offensive line that are being covered up pretty well. They're doing a decent enough job of keeping it from getting exposed, which is a credit to them. They're playing to their quarterback strengths, unlike what you saw with Tampa Bay, which decided they were going to run, an entire play action, against a team that knows that you're passing the ball when you're down 4 scores. Play action's not working. Sorry. But Steelers are doing a good job of covering that up. And that is that's what's keeping them, that's what's keeping their offense in position to catch up, in position to make plays later in games when they're struggling to really move the ball. I mean, the Steelers have had a lot of really long drives this season, but it's really everything is predicated on their short passing game, on their quick passing game. They're using tight ends a lot. They're using a lot of quick draw routes, and I think that's really where their consistency has been its best. That's where they've been able to move the ball down the field. They can get a deep ball every now and again. They usually try that middle third every 4 or 5 passes, but there is really it's really a very simple game plan, and they're just executing it right. And that's why with the help of an excellent defense, a defense that was on the field far too long against the Cowboys, but still found ways to make plays. I think that they bailed themselves out as a team because the Cowboys, while talented, you knew that it was going to be harder for them to win the game with their offense, and that's something that you usually don't hear about the Cowboys, but The defense played well enough, but when you're on that kind of roll, when you're 8-0, when you're 7-0, trying to make it 8-0, I mean, it's hard to beat teams that are on rolls like that. Teams that are moving like that have a lot of momentum. Mentally, they have a lot of momentum. They know that the break is coming to put them over the top. And the teams that are losing a lot, like the Cowboys, that's 2-6 at the time, that's a team that's waiting for the bad break. They know that the bad break is coming somewhere. They know the bad break's coming somewhere. And Big Ben got hurt in that game, or almost got hurt. And I think that he got the couple of magic beans from the team doctor, and he was able to come out and knock it out. He got some magic, and he was able to knock it out, finish the game off, and get the win, get the W. But Cowboys, obviously, this is the pain, the misery continues, and they're still in the division. They're still in the division race. They still have the ability to actually make the playoffs, which is that's just something that I think we're all scratching our heads about at this point. But yeah, those two games, I just wanted to kind of, draw back into those. I'm going to be having my O-line breakdown, and I'm going to be having a special guest in that O-line breakdown. So make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you hit that bell notification so that when my offensive line breakdown video drops, you get to check that out as soon as it premieres. Hope to have that ready to go by Saturday. So make sure you smash that bell notification so that you can get notified when that video is ready to drop. Now, as I promised, and boy, this will be to end the podcast later on down the timeline here. I got a custom tier maker power ranking setup. We're going to go through that today. Once I get through the main stories I'm going to talk about, we're going to do a quick power ranking. We're going to find out which teams we think should be positioned in the best place. I think you guys are going to like the categories that I made up for these for part of these rankings, because we're not just doing a 32-1. I've got some nice titles for these that I think you guys are going to enjoy as well. So next up, let's talk a little bit about NFL contracts. And I'm going to reference this. Let me see here. That's funny. I'm going to reference this this Bleacher Report article for where is it? For some of the worst contracts. And I was reading through this article. I didn't think much of it, but as a player, I used to look at these articles, and I always kind of disregarded them, because I'm always thinking to myself, how do these guys even really know whether a guy is playing up to their contract or not? Like, how do you know? How do you know? Because it's really, there's really, let's see if I can find this thing. There's really not, jeez, I should have saved when I did it. All right, again, bear with me here, folks. Okay, here we go. Boom. And I'll share this with you guys. I never really paid attention to these because it annoyed me that sports articles or sports journalists would have the audacity to try and grade players as if they know what a player is supposed to be doing on certain plays, or whether their technique is being executed appropriately or not. They never really know these things. So how can you say a guy is playing up to his contract or under his contract? You don't know unless you're looking at his grading sheets. But I think that this is still an interesting thing, nonetheless, to take a look at here, because I do believe that there are some that there are some contracts in the NFL that are obviously very bad contracts, all things considered. And the person that we see here at the very top of this list, at the very top of this article, is sorry to say, I love Zeke. I've met Zeke a couple times. He's come to my establishment a few times here in Atlanta, and he's just not playing the way that he played before he got a deal. Now, look, nobody is ignorant of the fact that the Cowboys are not the same Cowboys they were when he signed that deal. But even in his better performances this season, you're just kind of waiting for that moment when Zeke explodes forward. You're waiting for that moment when he actually can take over a game in the way that we've seen him do in a couple of occasions throughout the course of his career. This would be a great opportunity for him to kind of validate himself as the top running back in the NFL by being somebody who can carry the team. And I say that because I've experienced it myself. We had a running back by the name of Maurice Jones-Drew. And when I tell you that we played in 2011, his first year, I believe, in the Pro Bowl, if I'm thinking about this correctly, Maurice Jones-Drew on a team with a rookie quarterback in Blaine Gabbert, with not a single receiver that you could ever name on this planet today in 2020, because that's how unknown they were back in 2011. This was a running back who every team we went against knew this is the only guy they got. This is the only guy they got. 9 men in the box, man coverage on both receivers. They don't even care. There's not even a safety. There's not even a safety over the top. Just man coverage on the wideouts. Everybody else in the box. Stop Maurice Jones-Drew. That was the entire season. And he won the rushing title. Maurice Jones-Drew won the rushing title. We won 5 games that year. But, despite the losses, this guy still was the best performer at his position in the NFL, bar none. He got the rushing title. He went to the Pro Bowl, went first team All-Pro, boom, on a team that didn't have anything on offense except for him. So I think it's appropriate for this to be the first person we see up here, and I'm sure we'll get to his contract situation here in a moment. But let me just go through this article with you guys. It says here, in terms of bad contracts, the NFL has come a long way since Washington gave defensive tackle Albert Haynesworth, a guy I had to play almost every single year of my career, and for half of it, I had to play him twice a year. $100 million over 7 years in 2009. The collective bargaining agreement has aided teams in signing fiscally responsible contracts, but they can never be completely protected. Even the most shrewd front offices will sometimes give a player more than he's worth. For this exercise, we'll look at the worst contract on each roster with the following considerations: money owed, performance relative to cost, player mobility. So basically, they're going to say, how much is this player still owed by the team? How well are they playing? And how easy can you trade these players if you don't feel the situation's working out? Now, I'm not going through all of these, but I'm going to hit on some of the big ones. I think this one, I think that this is in no way, shape, or form an accurate contract to say is a bad contract with the Atlanta Falcons. This is the best player on their team by far. He is the most productive player on their team by far. And at the end of the day, I'm sure that they are more than happy to pay him the amount of money that they do. And they don't think they're getting a bad deal out of this at all. But it says here, wide receiver Julio Jones says the contract, 3 years, $66 million, $64 million guaranteed, signing extension in 2019, expires in 2023. Calling Julio Jones' contract the worst feels like sacrilege, and it is. But this is mostly the product of where the Atlanta Falcons are as a franchise. After the dismissal of head coach Dan Quinn and general manager Thomas Dimitroff, and with the team third in the NFC South with a 3-6 record, it's time to rebuild. With Calvin Ridley taking over the number one role, it no longer makes sense for Jones to be paid as the top wideout. Calvin Ridley taking over the top role? No. You're telling me that Calvin Ridley is the Falcons' number one. That Matt Ryan would rather throw the ball to him than throw the ball to Julio Jones. I don't think so. Do not think so. Anyways, as we continue. Jones, 31, would have been a great trade chip at the deadline of November 3rd, but his massive contract made him unmovable. He carries a dead cap number of nearly $59 million this season, $38.6 million in 2021. The Falcons have potential out following the 2022 campaign, but even then they would be charged $7.8 million to trade or release him. The franchise is basically stuck with him until he is 34, to his age 34 season, and it could use the money elsewhere on a roster filled with holes. Now, I think from a logistics standpoint, yes, that is a somewhat of a worst case scenario contract to have on paper, but I think that the value is still equal to the amount of money that they're paying Julio Jones. You still get a person who draws two defenders on every route he runs. You still get a guy who is a great blocker in the run game, which is heavily underlooked when you talk about Julio Jones and his abilities as a player. He is a hugely underlooked, underrated run blocker at the wideout spot. He's really good at that. You should watch him on Sundays, check him out, watch his footwork, watch where his hand placement is. Julio does a damn good job. Now, here's one that I've had a chance to watch some game film on this center here in Mitch Morse. And I got to say, I can't really agree with some of the things that they're saying here on Bleacher Report when it comes to this, mainly because I've been watching their film and, this guy is one of the most consistent. He's one of the most consistent blockers on their line from what I can tell. But Mitch Morse says 4 years, 44.5 million, 26.2 million guaranteed, expires in 2023. This is a testament of how wise general manager Brandon Beane has been in his spending. Morse's contract isn't awful. If his pay were bad enough, or if his play were bad enough, Buffalo Bills could move on from the 28-year-old next season and only incur $5.5 million in dead cap. This deal makes the list because Morse isn't playing up to the money he's earning. He has the second highest cap hit at his position and is scheduled to be 6th next year. Yet his PFF grade is just 65.6, and he's the second most penalized center in the league this year. Again, this contract isn't a team killer, but Morse is one of the few players on the Bills making big money right now. Now, I think it's hard to really critique this without first talking a little bit about Pro Football Focus. I think Pro Football Focus, while they do have somewhat, I would say somewhat decent analysis and evaluation of players, for the most part, skill positions, they're not generally accurate to me, in my opinion, with a lot of offensive linemen, because again, it boils down to what is that offensive line being coached to do? How are their blocks intended to be handled on any given play? And what kind of play are they being put in? When you look at a team like Tampa Bay, when you look at some of the things they did against the Saints with play actions in situations where play action is utterly useless. You're down too many points for a play action to be effective. Well, how can you really downgrade a lineman's performance if they're being put in a position to fail due to the play call that's being given to them? That is something that there has to be a consideration for. I don't think that Pro Football Focus considers a lot of the situational football scenarios that play into just the initial thought processes from defensive linemen to offensive linemen. They're just not there. I know defensive linemen who look at a scoreboard and see that a team's down 17 points and it's 3rd and 6. Well, they get paid to sack the quarterback. They're not even worried about the run game if you're going to run a play action. So for an offensive lineman who's going to be asked to sell the run, who's going to be asked to actually show run, going up against a defender who is not even considering run in any way, shape, or form, you're putting that offensive lineman in a position to get beat fast. And I think that when those kind of things happen, you don't downgrade the offensive lineman for his technique or for losing on the play. He had no chance of winning from the outset when you decided you were going to run a play action with 2 tight ends in the game on a 3rd and 6 when you're down 17 points. You should know better than that if you're an offensive coordinator. So if you're going to do that to him, then don't get mad when your quarterback gets put in a body bag. So I think at the end of the day, you look at this here, and I've watched this guy play in a number of games on film. This is one of their most consistent blockers. Their center and their left tackle, or I feel like, are their most consistent blockers. I feel like their right guard gets turned a lot on Buffalo, so he has a lot of issues with holding the depth of the pocket because he gets turned early in his pass sets, which, yes, the quarterback can step up, but he's stepping up into a lane that's already been condensed down by a defensive lineman who's squeezing from lateral positions. So I know that's a lot of football talk there for guys, but these are the things that run through my head when I look at these kind of grades, because, for the teams where I've actually watched a lot of film on them, it just doesn't make a ton of sense with how some of these grades are being promoted on obviously sports news websites, and they're using that as kind of their standard, in measuring these guys. So, just an example of how Pro Football Focus, they're usually more accurate on skill positions, but with offensive line, I think that they tend to play more to names than they do actual players' abilities, and that's where you can see some guys getting graded. Some guys do get graded a little bit differently in their Pro Football Focus breakdowns because of that, and that's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Carolina Panthers. This is a defensive tackle, Kawan Short. No, we're not going to talk about him. Robert Quinn. No, we're not going to talk about him. There's a couple other. Geno Atkins. Now, this is another guy who I've played against multiple times. Geno Atkins was probably the best defensive tackle that I played against throughout the course of my career, just from an all-around standpoint. This guy has a motor. He plays fast. He plays the entire play. And he is not he is a strong individual. He's a guy who I had to play against, I think, 2 or 3 times in Cincinnati, or against Cincinnati. And, this is a guy who really has been a consistent performer throughout the course of his career. Now, that's not to say he doesn't have a contract that can't be considered bad, but let's take a look here and see. Geno Atkins, 4 years, $65 million with $25 million guaranteed. Signed an extension in 2018, expires 2023. Even when Atkins is healthy, his contract is cumbersome. The 32-year-old doesn't fit in with the youth movement of the Cincinnati Bengals roster. And, I always freaking hate hearing these journalists talk about the youth movements. Well, how do you think these youth movement players are able to grow and become impact players on the field? Because they have to have veterans who have been doing it for years before them. They have to have those kind of guys in the stable to help them grow, to help mentor and bring those guys along. These guys just don't get good and understand all the nuance and intricacies of football, with just 2 years being on the field. They got to learn from these guys who have been out there for 6, 7, 8, 9 years, 10 years, in order to be able to pick up from those from the knowledge that those players pass down to them, and then be able to capitalize on it on Sundays. It's just not that simple. So I hate when I hear things about youth movements, because youth movements only prosper when you have veteran oversight to help it grow. But it says here, Atkins missed the first 4 games with a shoulder injury and has been sparsely used since coming back to the lineup. He's played 19 snaps or fewer in each of his 4 appearances, and in Week 8, he was the least used defensive lineman in the rotation. This makes his $14.2 million cap hit this season and similar cap hits over the next 2 years hard to stomach. The good news is the deal is much easier to get out of than most on this list. The team can part ways with him next year and only take a $5.2 million dead cap. That number goes down to 22.6 in 2022 for his age 34 season. Given the investment in DJ Reader, 4 years, $53 million over the offseason, it's likely Atkins will be cap casualty next year after 11 seasons in Cincinnati. And, that's an unfortunate thing to happen, because this is a guy who has been a part of this franchise for 11 seasons. The guy has provided Pro Bowl level play for the Bengals consistently over his 11 years. And, I think that, everybody's clock is ticking once you sign on that dotted line. So everybody's clock is ticking. Geno Atkins will likely be a player who doesn't finish his contract because his position is a far more expendable position than a receiver, than a quarterback, than even a tight end. Defensive tackle and guard are 2 of probably the most expendable positions on the football field. So, he will probably end up being a guy who gets the axe because of his contract, but I think that he's going to provide excellent depth wherever he goes in the NFL. Now, this is another person who I think that maybe there's a little bit to his situation, especially now that he's out with a torn ACL. Odell Beckham has a 5-year, $90 million contract with $65 million guaranteed. Expires in 2024. Says the Browns made a splashy move when they traded for Odell Beckham in 2019, but they paid a hefty price. Not only did they send safety Jabril Peppers, right guard Kevin Zittler, and a first-round pick who became Dexter Lawrence, and a third-rounder who became O'Shane Zimenez. Jeez, they gave up a lot to the Giants, but they also became responsible for Beckham's massive contract. Beckham has the league's 11th highest cap hit in 2020. Going to be taking, yet next year, he's set to have the 8th highest at $15.8 million. Man. However, his numbers have declined in Cleveland. Posted a career low 64.7 yards per game. 2019, his 45.6 this season before tearing his ACL. Now the Browns are stuck with him for 1 more year. He carries a dead cap number of 12.8 in 2021, but has no guaranteed money after that. Woo! Yeah, Odell Beckham, OBJ. I kind of saw that coming. You send guys to Cleveland for their careers to peter out. Cleveland's they've been trying to turn things around there. Obviously, they're having some success this year, and a lot of people were expecting Odell to have a bounce back year this year after really kind of falling under the shadow of what's his name? Oh, I forget his name. Javon something. But Odell Beckham just kind of, it was looking like it was going to be a year for him to bounce back, and we just didn't see that. We started to see that, but then he got hurt, so now we don't see that anymore. I think he might become a cap casualty in the next year, if not being traded to somewhere else. I think that there's always a possibility that a team like New England may come knocking at the door because they are in serious need of some wide receiver help. So that could be a possibility for next season, but his contract is a rough one to deal with if you are any front office person. And here we come to the main featurette of this portion of the podcast. Running back Ezekiel Elliott. Now, this guy, like I said before, a lot of money that he's making, more power to him. But I think it's fair enough to say, and I think that everyone here will mostly agree, that he just has not been the player that we saw him prior to receiving a $90 million contract. I think that he is kind of having that big money hangover. You get that big money, and then that season that you get that big money, it's over. You just kind of taking a chill pill until somebody says your name the wrong way. Then you're back on it. But let's take a quick look here. Ezekiel Elliott, 6 years, $90 million, 50.1 guaranteed. Signed an extension in 2019. Expires 2027. And something tells me you just know damn well that ain't gonna last. Let's see here. Given the results of the 2020 season thus far, the Cowboys may have made a big error with Elliott's holdout-driven extension. While Dallas has yet to lock up quarterback Dak Prescott on a long-term deal, it gave the 25-year-old Elliott the most guaranteed money at the position by more than $10 million. Not all of the Cowboys' woes this season can be attributed to Prescott's absence after the signal caller suffered a season-ending ankle fracture, but without him, the offense has plummeted to 26th in defense-adjusted value over average. Elliott isn't doing much to soothe the pain behind a beat-up offensive line. He's averaging 1.8 yards after contact, which is 26th in the league. Tony Pollard, playing in the same offense, is averaging 1.9 and will only cost the team $841,945 this season and just over $1 million in each of the next two seasons. Elliott is a great player, but a running back has to be transcendent to earn that kind of money. Key word there, transcendent. Elliott hasn't proved to be that this year, and the club is going to need money to keep Prescott and fix the other holes on its roster. And I think that, I really believe that is a very accurate description of what you have to have from a running back in order to justify the money that the running back makes. Ezekiel Elliott is not a transcendent running back. I don't think outside of Derrick Henry that there is a transcendent running back in the NFL right now. But again, being a player who has played with a transcendent level running back in Maurice Jones-Drew, a guy who was 5'7", won the rushing title, went to the Pro Bowl 3 years in a row, a guy who is known for physicality, a guy who is known to have breakaway speed, a guy who's known to be able to block and has put plenty of defenders on their ass blocking before in his career. I don't see that same kind of player in any way in Ezekiel Elliott, comparing him to Maurice Jones-Drew. I don't think that's even close. Maurice Jones-Drew by far was the better running back when you compare them one-on-one. Even with the Cowboys team that could average 10 to 12 wins a season, Ezekiel Elliott is nowhere the player I think that Maurice Jones-Drew was. Maurice Jones-Drew caught balls out of the backfield. Maurice Jones-Drew threw touchdown passes. He did everything you could think of. He returned kicks. He excelled at all of them. A Pro Bowl player in almost every aspect. He was a Christian McCaffrey. But him and Christian McCaffrey are far closer in comparison than anything with Ezekiel Elliott as a player. But I think that he does have a contract that was a big mistake. Running backs don't have that kind of value in the NFL anymore, and this is the biggest reason why. Can you lean on that running back to take you through the course of a game? You can't. You can't do that with Ezekiel Elliott. He's just not that kind of guy. You can't give him the ball 30 times a game right now and him have 120 plus yards. It's not going to happen. He's averaging less after contact than his backup. I mean, that's enough said, right? It's enough said. So I think that with that, we'll kind of bring this portion of the podcast to an end, talking about bad contracts, just because I'm not going through all 32 teams, and I really wanted to get to some of the bigger names that really, at the end of the day, ended with Ezekiel Elliott and talking about him. But again, for those of you who are just jumping on, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the Observant Lineman, Uche Nwaneri. Really appreciate you guys for being here on the podcast. If you feel like dropping a question in there you want me to read, hey, don't hesitate to send a super chat. I will read that live on the podcast, and we might even discuss a topic that you bring up if it's something that I feel like is good enough to really kind of go deeper into. So if you want to jump in and into the conversation in that regard, drop a super chat in there, and I can get to reading off some of you guys' questions or some of your comments. So just let me know. But now we're going to talk about a little bit something different here. I wanted to talk about this mainly because, I've done a few videos really going over some of the policy in the NFL regarding minority head coaches, minority general managers, et cetera, et cetera. I've done videos. You can check on my TOL daily briefing playlist for videos where I actually talk about the Rooney Rule and aspects of it. And here now today, we've gotten word that the NFL is going to begin compensating draft picks for hiring minority coaches and promoting minority coaches up to higher positions within the franchise. For example, head coach, general manager. Now I'm going to share this article here from the Inside Hook. And it says here, teams will receive draft pick compensation if minority coaches or execs are poached by other clubs. So I guess it's a little bit more specific here. But let's take a look. It says, and I'm going to give you guys my opinion after the fact. I just want to read to you guys this so you guys can see what the details are, so we can, have a relatively civil discussion about this. I don't think that I think that I know where a lot of people may stand on this, and there may be some things we agree upon, some things we don't. We'll see. But as it stands here, this article by Evan Blyer states that the NFL owners have voted to reward teams for developing minority coaches and executives who go on to become important pieces for other clubs. Under the proposal that was approved on Tuesday, which still needs to be signed off on by the NFLPA, teams that lose minority coach or executives, teams that lose a minority coach or executive to a head coaching position or primary football executive role with another club will receive a third-round compensatory pick for 2 consecutive years. If a team loses a minority coach and an exec to both head coach and general manager position role or president roles, the club will receive a third-round compensatory pick for 3 consecutive years. This is an important initiative for the NFL, and we have often said that we don't know if there's one specific step that's going to make the difference, said NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. So our effort here is to continue to look at everything we're doing to try and improve our policies, our procedures, to encourage and to get the results we want, which is more diversity and inclusion within our ranks. Speaking of minority coaches in the NFL, Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers is the longest tenured black coach in the NFL, with the Steelers improving to 8-0 on Sunday. Tomlin clinched his 14th straight non-losing season. The only other NFL coach to begin his coaching career with 14 straight seasons of 500 or better is Marty Schottenheimer. Also on Tuesday, league owners approved previously discussed contingency plan to expand the NFL playoffs from 14 teams to 16 teams. That should the league be forced to add an extra week to the season due to COVID-19, leading to the postponement of games. In the latest round of testing in the NFL, which was conducted between November 1st and 7th, a total of 56 employees, including 15 players and 41 staff members, returned confirmed positive COVID-19 tests. That's more than double the total number of positive tests from any other testing period. So, having a spike in the old Rona. But, this situation, it's hard. It's hard to really gauge, how this is going to play out. Is this a good idea? Is this something that's really going to make a difference for minority coaches getting hired as head coaches or general managers? I don't know. I think that I think an incentive is better than a requirement in this regard. I think that an incentive is better than a requirement. You don't want to force a team's hand to do something that they may not necessarily, want to do. But in this regard, I think it does kind of play the middle ground. I think that by having teams receive compensatory picks if they, do sign a minority coach as an executive or a head coach for another team, I think that does somewhat balance the playing field. Because that team would really, really want to have that particular coach in order to activate that kind of clause. Like, it's not something that would be just a simple point and pick. These guys would have to have vetted this guy pretty soundly to think and to believe that they want to hire that coach because of his qualifications. Now, if he's a minority, then there's going to be a bonus for the team that loses that coach, because now they've lost a quality coach, and it was a coach that's going to be on the far more rare side of the coaching carousel. So, boom, you throw him a third round compensatory pick for 2 years. Boom. So that might be something that balances out. I don't know. I hope that I hope that it works. I hope that it's something that is fairly balanced. I'm not going to say that it's right or wrong in either way, because they're not actually forcing any team to do anything. They're just saying, hey, if you do this, if a team loses X kind of personnel in their staffing because of another team's interest, then hey, you have helped promote and improve and diversify our coaching rosters within the league. So let them have a compensatory pick. I think that's fine if it works the way that they're talking about it working. Now, with all that being said, it's time to get to the view. Let's get this. Let me get out my notes here. Gonna look at my notes here, Jerry, and we're gonna line it back up, and we're gonna get my power rankings back up here and take a look at from last week, if you know what I mean. And we're gonna do this power rankings the right way now. Not no foolishness here. So what we're gonna do here, I have got mine. Let me share the screen with you guys. Tier maker that we're gonna use. Bada bing, bada boom. That we're gonna use to. And let me zoom in a little bit here. Boom, boom. All right. We're going to use this to set up our Power rankings. Now, as you can see, I've got a number of tiers here in my power ranking. And at the bottom of the power ranking tier maker, we have the basement dwellers. And after the basement dwellers, we have the just trying to keep my job. And you know what? I think let me see if I can adjust this color here. We're going to adjust that color. Just trying to keep my job. And right above that, and and I'll explain how these are seen in my eyes. So instead of doing a straight 32-1 power ranking, let's look at it like this. Who are the basement dweller teams in the NFL? These are the teams that are playing for the first overall pick, for the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, if you will. Who are the basement dwellers? And then right above the basement dwellers, who are the coaches that are just trying to keep their job? Like, it's more about, can I squeak out one more season? Am I doing a good enough job to get one more crack at it to try and make this team worth a damn? Who are those teams? And then the next one we got here is the party crasher. Now, the party crasher is that team that is not quite garbage, not quite good, but they're closer to good than they are to garbage, just slightly. This is the team that can knock you out of home field advantage in the last few weeks of the season. This is the team that can knock you out of that first round bye. This is the team that can kick you from a division winner to now you're a wild card because you slipped up and lost to these bums who are almost good but not good. But they are a party crasher. They're a team that with a galvanized effort on a final home game of the season to hit 8-8, this is the team that can knock you out of the playoffs or knock you a cog down in the playoff picture whilst finding something to celebrate about to end their season, even though they're not going to the playoffs. That's the party crasher. They're going to crash the other team's party, the other team that's considering not playing some players so they can get ready for their divisional game or get ready for, their next their playoff home game. And boom, this is the team that comes in and just sinks all of that. That's the party crasher. One win away. This is the team that believes that they are one win away from being a playoff contender in the NFL. Those are the teams that, again, the 8-8, 9-7 teams that are in the hunt in the last week of the NFL. That's your one win away team. Then after that, we have the good for a cameo. Good for a cameo. Now, the good for a cameo team, that's the team that, much like the Marvin Lewis-led Cincinnati Bengals of the early 2000s, this is a team that constantly has a better than expected regular season, gets into their very first playoff game, and consistently gets their ass booted right back out. And based on our rankings of the teams, you could look at squads like, Tampa Bay. Well, not Tampa Bay, Atlanta. You could look at squads like, who else was one of those teams? I mean, you could even call Baltimore one of those teams. You could call, who are the teams that have made it into the playoffs in the last 3 or 4 years that they're constantly having good records, constantly making it in, constantly falling right back out? Those are the kind of teams we're talking about here. So that is the good for a cameo team. And then you got the we should have a shot team. Again, your Baltimore's, your Tennessee Titans, your, formerly your Houston Texans back before they became trash and hot garbage. And then, a team like your Buffalo Bills. These are guys who should have a shot. Who do you think they are this year? We're going to have that area for them ranked. And then you got that final tier of teams. Got to see us first. And that means that is a team you got to go through them to get to the next round. Whatever that round may be, this is a team that is shown to be a consistent winner throughout the course of the season. And in the playoffs, generally, you got to go through that team's stadium to get a shot at taking that next step towards the Super Bowl. So, or making it to the Super Bowl, you got to go through them. One of those combination of things. So that's how we're going to kind of set this up to end this thing off the right way. We got all the teams down here, and I am going to start, of course, with the basement dwellers. And for those of you who have watched my last week's power rankings, I'm sure a few of these teams are going to stay in play. And I believe basement dweller number one, obviously, is the New York Jets. Now, after that, when you take a look at what's going on in the NFL, last week we had the Jaguars of Jacksonville at 31. And I believe that we stick with that. I believe that our hot garbage basement dweller Jacksonville Jaguars, unfortunately, they're at home with the New York Jets. Now, last week we had the Cowboys at 30th. And, I'm gonna skip those guys this week, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put one more team in the basement dwellers, and I'm gonna have them New York Giants sitting down there in the basement dwellers as well. Now, next up, I think that we can put these Cowboys in the just trying to keep my job category. Yeah, they put up a heck of a fight against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they also had a 10-point or a 9-point lead or a 10-point lead that they couldn't hold on to in the fourth quarter. So right now, they're just trying to keep their job. They're just trying to keep their job. I believe that the Washington football team, formerly known as the Skins, I think that's another squad right now for the players at least. They're just trying to keep their job. A lot of them won't keep them, but the guys who are in the core are trying to stay in the core. So those guys are definitely just trying to keep their job. Just trying to keep their job. We had at the 27th spot last week, we had the Bengals. I think that stays where it is. And I think these guys can be, I think they can be a party crasher this year. So I'm going to put them right now in the party crasher mode. They could go from party crasher down to basement dweller in a quick hot second. So don't think that these guys are immune from getting worse than where they are right now as a team, because they're not. Now, last week in the 26th position, we had the Detroit Lions. And, Lions are 3-5. They're 0-3 at home. They haven't really shown the kind of resolve to actually compete against a division opponent yet. In this power ranking tier maker, I'm going to say that these Detroit Lions are just trying to keep their job. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I think the Detroit Lions are just trying to keep their job right now. Think Matt Patricia was a big mistake for this franchise. I think that he is doing just enough to not get fired, but that could actually be worse for the Lions. Yeah, that could actually be worse for the Lions, that he's not failing more miserably than he is right now. I think that that's really, really, that's really ugly for them. That's really ugly for them. Now, another team that I believe is, and I actually think this team is it actually fits more in the category of right now. Right now, I will give them just trying to keep my job because they actually beat the Jaguars. Who are if you beat one of these basement dwellers head up in the week prior to my ranking, then you cannot be a basement dweller yourself. And that is where I will put the Houston Texans as of right now, just trying to keep my job. Because they did go head up against another team that was 1-6, and they got the win against my Jags. So there's that. Oh, Lord. Oof. All right. So moving on from that, we got Houston there. Let's pull. Let's see. We had Carolina last week ahead of Houston. And Carolina actually put a good game, put a fight up against the Chiefs. It wasn't as close as the score would lead you to believe. It's 33-31, but they was actually getting their ass whooped. They was getting their ass whooped. So I'm not gonna have any mercy on them right now. I think that they're going into the just trying to keep my job category. They are not basement dwellers, but they just trying to stay in this. We just trying to be glad we here. And I also think that my next team up as well is also another team that's just trying to keep their job. And I think that this is accurate. I think that these are teams right now that may be thinking rebuild next year. Like, yo, we got to crush everything. Now, when I say just trying to keep my job, that's for the players too. That's not just for the coaches. That's for the players too. So these are teams that are in that category. There's a lot of teams this year that, I feel like the players are literally like on the verge. It's a close call between whether or not it's going to be a rebuild or not. And I think that's accurate. I think that is accurate. Now, next up here, Denver. Last week we had Denver at the 22 spot. I think that Denver is showing a little bit of that. They're showing a little wishy-washiness, right? They're a little wishy-washy. They lost to the Falcons, and they're sitting right now at 3-5. But I think this is a team that has some streakiness in them. I think they do have some streakiness in them, and I think that for right now, I'm going to actually put these guys in as party crashers. I think they can be party crashers, most definitely. I think that they have that kind of potential to play for a decent enough record to be a team that's not garbage, but they got a lot of proving to do. I think that's fair for them. Next up, we got these Chargers. And I think, again, this is another team that I can put in the party crasher category. And that is simply because of Justin Herbert. That kid is special. I think he's special, and I think he's going to be able to I think he's going to be able to carry these guys to a few wins. Now, they've lost a couple of games here 2 weeks in a row on the last play of the game. They're starting to find something. They're starting to find it. And he's leading the charge. So, all due respect to Tyrod Taylor, this is Justin Herbert's team now. He's the captain now. So, I think they just keep, trying to develop this kid. They're going to move up into that 1 win away by next season. By the end of next season, they'll be 1 win away. And then we'll be talking about postseason from there. Now, here's another team that, to their own detriment, I believe, they're going to be party crashers. We're starting to see beams of light, faint, but we're still starting to see beams of light coming out of Atlanta. And, you got to love what Julio did last week. You got to love that, these guys were able to actually win a close game. Relatively close, 34-27 versus the Broncos. But, hey, it's a start. Todd Gurley, 19 carries, 53 yards and a touchdown. These guys, they're finding something. They're living. They're living. It's not good, but they're living. And, this could be something for Raheem Brock to put his hat on, and when he's trying to find a position as a head coach for these Atlanta Falcons. So I think that is, I think that's fair to put the Falcons right there as party crashers, and they're on the higher end of that party crasher. They're not on the they're kind of on the higher end. All right, so now next, I think these guys are falling fast. I think they're fading fast out of Chi-Town. I think they're fading fast, and right now I'm going to put these guys in the 1 win away category because, let's take a look at their schedule real fast. When we look at these Bears, let's take a look at what they got coming up. They've lost now 3 in a row. They've lost 3 in a row. They slid to second place in the NFC North. And you look at their schedule and you think one way. They've got, let me see what they got here. They got the Vikings, Packers, Lions, Texans, Vikings, Jaguars, Packers. They have 1, 2, 3, 4 division games left. 5 division games out of their next 7 games. Those are going to be the most competitive games that you're going to play all season. And they're in control of their own destiny. Nick Foles has a 48 QBR. This is this year. 48 QBR. Allen Robinson is a shining spotlight on their offensive from a firepower standpoint. Allen Robinson, the former Jacksonville Jaguar. He's got 712 yards receiving on 57 receptions and 3 touchdowns. He's performing. He could perform better if he had a better quarterback, but he's performing. And they have dropped 3 in a row. They're fading fast. I would have put them in, I would have put them in the good for a cameo spot even before the 3 losses, because as I've said in a number of my videos, if you go look on my channel and check out the week 6 video that I did, or I'm sorry, the week 3 video that I did, I called these guys as pretenders. I called them as the pretenders. They're the imposters. And it's really, at the end of the day, the formula is simple. If you don't have a good quarterback and you can't run the ball, then you're going to have trouble getting into the playoffs. And that's what this is going to boil down to. November and December, second half of the season. If they lose one more game, if they go down 4 games in a row, or if they lose one more game in the next 4 weeks, they're going to be looking at a really, really hard uphill battle into making it into the playoffs. It's going to be hard, and it's going to be for this team with the kind of players they have right now, the kind of performing that they're doing. It's going to be something that might be too much to be asking for the Bears. So we'll keep the Bears there in the 1 win away. But that's a tumble down from probably the higher end of good for a cameo. Now, next we got Minnesota. Now, Minnesota, I think it's safe to say this is where they belong. They just trying to keep their job. They expected way more. I think, if I'm being honest, this is where they started the season, before the season started. And by week 4, they were right here. By week 8, they were tinkering with Basement Dweller, and they were able to hold themselves into the just trying to keep my job category. That's where we got them right now. Just trying to keep my job. Don't see it moving too much from there. They've lost too many already for it to be any better than this. But, if they string 2 wins together, that might be the next move they make. We'll see. Woo! Another team, again, New England Patriots. Just trying to keep my job. I don't think I need to say too much more about the current situation in Foxborough. These boys almost gave it up to these boys. I don't think much more needs to be said. They just trying to keep their job. Las Vegas. Right now, before I even make this call, let me take a quick look here. Because I know what I feel like I want to get these boys. I know what I feel like I want to give them. But let me see what their schedule's looking like. Woo! You know what? These Raiders. These Raiders. I'm going to say this. Based on their schedule that they have left, where they got the Broncos, Chiefs, Falcons, Jets, Colts, Chargers, Dolphins, Broncos. They've already beat the best team in their remaining schedule. They've already beat the best team in the remainder of their schedule. That makes this a difficult call to make. But I'm going to go with my gut here. I'm going to go with my gut. I believe in John Gruden. And I believe that this team has already beaten the Kansas City Chiefs. They have the offensive firepower to have a shot, at having a decent playoff run and getting into the playoffs and having a decent run. That is, I think that's not outside the realm of possibilities for the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that this is a team right now that has the opportunity to turn a corner, and be a playoff contender in a serious fashion, which means they have a chance of going in and winning a wild card and getting into a divisional. They got a shot at making some noise. So I'm putting them up there. Write down the date. We'll see how I did in about 6 weeks. All right, next up, we got these Dolphins. Y'all. And you know what? I mean, this is another team that I think has, that is another team that I think is viable. This is the team that's 5-3. They've won 4 in a row against good enough opponents. These Dolphins are playing some ball now. 4 in a row against the Niners, Jets, Rams, Cardinals. So 2 pushovers, and I mean, look, the New England Patriots barely walked off the field with their lives against the Jets. But these Miami Dolphins, they goose-egged them 24-0. That is a statement win against any NFL team. No matter how bad they are. Then they soundly handled the Rams, and they won a close game against a Cardinals team that came off beating, squeaking out the win against a Seattle Seahawks team that was undefeated at the time. I got them up there. They got a shot, damn it. They should have a shot. Them in Buffalo. They're going to be battling for that division. That's going to be the battle. But I think they should have a shot. Next up, and they had a bye week this week. Cleveland. I think Cleveland right now, I think they're good for a cameo. They're halfway between that and 1 win away. I think that this is a team that is finding more success. They are finding success. Don't get me wrong here. They're finding some success. They are. But you got to think about, really, do we really think the Browns are going to be able to pull anything off, even at 5-3? We really think they're going to be able to pull anything off? They've got some tough competition they got to play against the rest of the season. And not super tough, but they've got some tough competition. They've got the Ravens, they got the Steelers, they got the Titans. I mean, I would argue that those are 3 automatic L's that you can drop on them right now. So you can make them 5-6 and then play out the rest against the Texans, Eagles, Jaguars. Oh, I'm sorry, Texans. Yeah, Texans, Eagles, Jaguars, Giants, and Jets. Those are games that, could be closer than you think they will. So yeah, I think that that's just a good for a cameo squad right now. They're good for a cameo. Best case scenario, they're going to wild card it and get knocked the hell out. So we'll see what happens with them. Now, next up, Buffalo. Them Buffalo Bills. I'm going to say that these guys should have a shot at making some noise. They should have a shot, and I'm saying that because if I'm being, 100, then they have some refining to do. Yes, they're 7-2. Yes, they've won 3 in a row. But I think they should have destroyed the Patriots. I think they should have destroyed the Jets. They had a solid win, a very solid win against the Seahawks. That is a hugely solid win for them, but they do have a bit of a gauntlet to play through to finish out this season. They've got the Cardinals. They're at the Cardinals next week. They got the Steelers, and they got the Dolphins. Those are going to be three teams that are going to be massive. Those are the biggest games of their seasons. But they also can't sleep on the Chargers. They can't sleep on the Broncos. And that means you're a team that can at best lose 2 more games this season to stay on pace with, with the top playoff performer or the top performing teams in the league. So definitely should have a shot. If I see them, if they win, if the Bills win, if they beat the Cardinals and then back up beating the Cardinals with beating the Chargers, then you got to go through them. I think you got to see them first to advance yourself in the playoffs. But right now, they should have a shot. I'm safe with that. Now, this is another one where I think this is another team that I think is going to fall in one of these two spaces. They either should have a shot or they're going to be good for a cameo. And I think right now, after losing to Miami, I got to put them at good for a cameo. They're good for a cameo. They had a head-to-head next generation battle of quarterbacks, and Miami outdealed them. Miami's got a better defense. Miami's playing more solid, more consistent ball. I think that Kyler Murray was a little streaky this game. I think that against Miami, he was not as – I think he was trying to just ride that wave, but not realizing you have to keep that – you have to sustain the wave. So if you can't sustain it, then the wave is going to flatten out. And I think that wave kind of flattened out on the Cardinals in that game against the Dolphins. So they're good for a cameo right now. We'll see if they can push that forward as we continue through the season here. Now, another team that I believe is sitting in the good for a cameo and almost slipped into one win away was these Los Angeles Rams. Now, these Los Angeles Rams are a bit of a mess if you're paying attention to what's going on with them. This is a team that really they really can't buy into their quarterback. He's not consistent enough to push them past a 2-game streak. They go 2-game loss, and then they're back and forth with a win against the Bears, loss against the Dolphins. These guys are beginning to fade, even though they're 5-3. They went from 4-1 to 5-3. They're losing momentum. Their defense is beginning to kind of give up more and more yardage. I just don't see this being a team that's going to be able to hold on if they lose another game. I think they're going to begin to see a little slide. So right now they sit in the good for a cameo, but they are one loss away from being 1 win away. And when you're 1 win away, people can get fired off that. People can get fired off 1 win away. You do 1 win away too many times, you're going to get fired. That's guaranteed. That's guaranteed. All right. Next up, and this team has completely flummoxed into this team is completely flummoxed into desperation. And I'm going to take them down into the just trying to keep my job category. Them San Francisco 49ers. They're riddled with injuries. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have a tight end. They don't have a defense. They don't have a running game. Woo! That's when you're just trying to hang on to your job. Don't do so bad that now people are asking for you to be fired. That's what they're trying to keep themselves from doing right now. That's the Niners. Not too much to talk about there. Next up, and I think that this team is another team that, it looked like things were about to get ugly. It looked like things were going astray, but they were able to stop the bleeding after their big loss to the Bengals, a surprising loss to many, and they pull the 24-17 win over the Bears. I really believe that this team is still a team that should have a shot. Tennessee Titans. They should have a shot. They should. They should. We all know the story there. King Henry, his merry men. They're going for it. Now, last week, this team was 8th on the power rankings. I'm not sure that I even moved them up. I'm not sure that I don't believe that they fall down. But they showed some shakiness over the last month, going 2 for 2 in the last 4 games. 2-2 actually in the last 4 games. I'm gonna call that they are still a team in my eyes when I'm really thinking about where, how things can flow through the course of the NFL season, how things really do fluctuate. And it really does boil down to how well can you cover up your weaknesses rather than try to just outscore everything with firepower. And I'm going to put these Green Bay Packers in the should have a shot category. And that's partly why. Yeah, they're 6-2. But if we're looking at the teams that they struggled against, these were teams that, maybe you say they struggle against the Bucs, and that's fine because of, the whole situation with them and their defense and Brady coming along. But there shouldn't have been no reason for them to lose. Struggle is one thing. Lose to the Vikings is another. And it didn't convince me in the slightest with them coming back and blowing out the 49ers. That don't mean nothing to me. So instead of being a gotta see us first team like they should be, they're underperforming once again, and we should have a shot. That's where they are. Green Bay, lock it in. Now, this team, I feel like, again, this is another team that you look at them and you think, oh, well, hey, they're top of their division, blah, 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 blah. Well, they're not top of their division anymore, but, they kind of got exposed for being another imposter of a franchise when it comes to the competitive side and the postseason play that a lot of fans are looking to see that their teams can push forward with. And that is these Indianapolis Colts. These Colts, I think they fall into the 1 win away situation. They don't have the quarterback position sewed up like it needs to be. Phillip Rivers is a stopgap. We know that. But you got to have, he needs weapons. He needs a weapon at tight end, and he needs a weapon at wideout. T.Y. Hilton is not a weapon at wideout. Not even nothing like he was for that one season that he was good. And he doesn't have a tight end that's anywhere as versatile as Antonio Gates that he had for, 13 plus years at the tight end spot. Even Antonio Gates, coming back out of retirement, Antonio Gates was better than the tight ends they got right now in Indianapolis. And that defense, which was supposed to be one of the top in the NFL, well, they showed us what they really are about. They about getting dusted because they got dusted 24-10 by a Ravens squad that can't even throw the ball, much less, be a serious threat to any defense that is anything worth their salt. That's actually a pretty drastic drop for these Colts. They're 1 win away. They're not going to win the division. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. And they have a tough schedule that they're going to have to play through because they got the Titans coming up, then they got the Packers, and they got the Titans again, then they got the Texans, then they got the Raiders, then they got the Texans, then they got the Steelers, then they got the Jaguars. These guys might have the hardest remaining schedule in the NFL. They have 1, 2, 3, 4 winning teams that they have to play against through the remainder of this season. And I'm sorry, I don't see them beating any of them. So the Colts are sitting back there and they are, it's just not going to happen. I don't see it happening. Now, next up, and then we're about to wrap this up. Next up on the list, whoo! You know what? This team impressed me. They did. They impressed me. But before I get to them, let's talk about these two elephants in the room, in my opinion. One of them being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is a team that has gone from this to this to this to this to this to that and all the way around. So where do they stand from my point of view? I think they're good for a cameo. I think that best case scenario, this team right now, based on work that they've done up to this point, head up against a divisional opponent. The Buccaneers got destroyed. So I actually think I'm gonna downgrade them just a little bit more. I'm gonna say that they're 1 win away. They're 1 win away. They're not good for a cameo yet. I think that this team is gonna find a lot out about themselves in the coming weeks, and I don't think they're gonna be happy with what they see. If I'm being honest, I don't think they're gonna be happy with what they see, because right now this is a team that's 6-3, but they have a losable schedule coming up. They got the Panthers, Rams, Chiefs, Vikings, Falcons, Lions, Falcons. I mean, if Green Bay can lose to the Vikings, certainly Tampa Bay can lose to the Vikings. The Lions are a party crasher. I feel like they're somewhat of a party crasher on any given week, but generally they are a team that's trying to keep their job, but they can be party crashers. They fluctuate. But yeah, I think the Bucs, they sit there in a solid position with one win away. I just don't see that as a squad that's really an upper echelon team right now, even at 6-3. Too inconsistent, too streaky, and they still have some top tier talent in way of teams that they got to play with the Chiefs and the Rams potentially being problems for them. Now next, let's go with Baltimore. Now Baltimore, I gotta say, I'm not convinced. I see a downward trend for a team that at one point was up here. I really do just see them as being good for a cameo. And if I'm being honest, that's not a terrible thing, because last year they was only good for a cameo. They was out in their first game. So, that's a little bit telling about what kind of squad this really is. If, and it's an if, it's a huge if you can contain Lamar Jackson, then you have a pretty good chance of beating Baltimore, because he can't, right now, which is worse than last year. He can't beat you with his arm. Lamar can't win the games throwing. So until he can regain some of that form from last year where he can be efficient throwing the ball, it's going to be hard for them. It's going to be hard for them. Next up, let's look at Seattle. You know what? I think at the end of the day, and this is just my gut instinct as a football player, I think at the end of the day, we know this team is going to be in the mix. I think we know that. I think at the end of the day, we know this team is going to be in the mix. We know that. And now why do we know that? Because of the men that are the leaders of those two teams. These guys represent, Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes, represent, I would say, these guys represent the elite level singular leadership position on their teams that's franchise wide. I think franchise wide, it is a consensus that with both of these teams, the man under the center is the heartbeat of the franchise. The franchise, from the office to the playing field. This is who these guys are. And if you think for a second that they're not going to play into the picture of who gets into the big games going into the Super Bowl, then you got another thing coming. I think it goes without saying right now that these guys are part of teams that you got to see them first if you want to play in a conference championship or in the Super Bowl. You got to see them. You got to go through them. I think that's fair. Now, with all that being said, there's two more decisions that have to be made here. One of them is the New Orleans Saints. These guys have went on a hell of a tear. A lot of people counted them out, including myself, after a couple of bumbles early in the season. They didn't look like the same Saints. They didn't look in sync at all. They didn't look like that kind of squad. And even with them going on this tear, I'll be honest with you, I do not believe it. So they go in there and we should have a shot. I believe that they will be playing to make noise in the playoffs, but I don't think anybody has to go through New Orleans. They don't have to go through the Saints to make it to the Super Bowl. They don't have to. But I like that they're fighting back. I like that the Saints are fighting to prove that they are a team to be reckoned with. I like that. I can respect that. Now, I think that this call obviously is I think this one's an obvious call that you got to kind of make, right? I mean, we can't just call them basement dwellers. Everybody would know that's a lie. You know, party crashers? Nah. I think everybody's trying to crash their party right now. Good for a cameo? I think we owe the franchise a little bit more respect than that. I think we definitely owe them a little bit more respect than that. They're 8-0. I think that we still have to respect the fact that they haven't lost the game. I mean, simple as that. The offense didn't look great. The team won ugly against the Cowboys. Yes, indeed. But there's a lot of circumstances that can explain that. I mean, the Cowboys are not a talentless team. We see that. The Cowboys are a team that clearly have lost their way, but they're still a man-for-man, very talented squad. Still. So any team that gets a good effort from those Cowboys is going to have, they're going to have to play 4 quarters to win. It's going to have to be 4 quarters. But these guys have faced adversity on multiple occasions. They've stepped up. They've won the game. Come hell or high water. So they get to dance with the football elites for the time being until further notice. But yes, this is my first Lineman Life podcast tier maker ranking showdown. There you have it. There you have it. We're going to save it. LLP. Oops. LLP tier week 9. Or wait, this is week 10 coming up. Week 10. Oops. Is that right? Yeah, week 10 coming up. Save that. Boom. Oh, get all this out of here. All right. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate everybody for being here on the Lineman Life podcast. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure that you are sharing and liking these videos that I post up. I'm going to be posting a few cut-ups from this podcast tonight on my channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you can look out for that. We will do this each and every week as we head into the back end of the season. So make sure you are saving the time and the place here on YouTube at 3 p.m., 3:15 generally is when we start Eastern time here with your observant lineman, Uche Nwaneri. Appreciate you guys so much for being here today as we went through all this stuff. And I will catch each and every one of y'all on the next one.